Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the show. Fernando.
Welcome to the show.
Today we've got a big one for you. This one's gonna be a multi-part, there's no doubt about it. And why, you ask? Well, it's an F-150. Stay with us for a minute. It's got a lot of neat stuff going in it. And what stuff, you might ask, is that? Take a look. This is going to be a full Audion system. We're putting in the AV 5.1K HD. We're putting in the AV Duo, or well, you know, they're Italian. We're gonna be putting a set of Voce tweeters up on the top of the dash, putting in a Bit 1 HD to make it all sound good. We're putting some Voce X 6.5s in the rear doors and a set of Thesis 6.5s in the front doors. How this is gonna be configured: this is a 5-channel amp. It has a Class A front stage. It's gonna be running these guys. A, B channels 3 and 4. It's gonna be running those guys. And then the 5th channel, well, we're gonna be putting a 10-inch sub underneath his back seat. We're also going to be making this all magically happen with this guy right here. This is the Nav TV Zen A to B interface for this Ford's Bang & Olufsen system. This is going to allow us to get a digital output from the factory radio. This is all going to be what they call a bit system. We're going to be Tosh linking out of this interface into the bit HD and then out of here into both of these amplifiers. That's what this is for. This allows us to remove the inputs from this amplifier and make them bit compatible. There's going to be no RCAs in this system at all. Naturally, we're going to be doing a ton of roadkill, fast rings. Not only is this going to be a multi-video, it's going to be a multi-day job. It's going to take some time. So sit back, get a nice coffee, whatever, relax, and enjoy the video. You ready to get started, Fernando?
Ready.
Let's get to it.
All right.
The first part of this build is going to be centered around getting the speakers into the car. Fernando doing all the sound treatment into the car, and I'm going to be making all the brackets in order for these speakers to be put into the car. Then we're going to move on to the actual integration into the factory amplifier, making the board for it, as well as adding in power wire, fuse holders, and all the things that are associated with the rest of the install. Fernando's already working on the door panel. Let's join him as he starts to take the door panel apart and get some sound treatment inside of it.
The first thing we're gonna do is locate the screws. It's 2 7mm under the panel. You grab a pick tool. Behind this cover, it's a 2 8mm. And the handle, you grab your pry tool and just carefully pry it out. In the bottom part of the handle, it has a little notch in here, so you can actually grab a pry tool and stick it in there. It gives you that space so you can pry it out. Inside, it's 2 8mm. Remove the cell panel. Behind there is a 7mm. Then you grab your pry tool. On the handle has a clip. Push it down. You have 3 clips. I always like to pull my switcher out, just in case I have to roll the window up and down. I don't have to grab the whole door panel. Now the speaker has 4 7mm.
So it's just these bumps here. Yeah, there's no bump there.
No.
That's just where we're gonna drill the hole.
Go
here, here, and then one down here somewhere. Okay, I will get to work. First thing on my list of things to do is cut these guys out here. On the factory door panel, there's a piece of plastic, this. And in this particular install, he's going for the premium package of sound treatment, which involves us making a plastic panel to replace that. To install this, we're gonna be putting some rivets in the door so that this will screw into place. This will have sound treatment on it. It's gonna be a removable panel. Since Fernando's working on the doors first, I need to get these made up. I have to cut out 2 pieces of 16 by 28. We're going to be using 1/8" blown PVC for this. We're going to use some template tape to attach all 3 pieces together. Now, in case you're wondering how we made this particular template, We took the factory piece that was on the door that we just showed you. We laid that on a piece of 1/2 inch, traced it out, took it over the jigsaw, cut it out, and now we have an exact copy of the door. When using the router, you want to make sure you set your bearing height. You want it to ride along this material. Lock it into place. The last thing we want to do before we remove the top piece is drill our holes that are in this. The holes are going to be where we're going to put our rivets in the car. Now the reason why we put these big holes in it here and here are there's 2 dimples in the door that these have to sit on top of. So this actually just gives it clearance so this will sit flush on there. Let's take them to the door and see how they look. See, there's a little nipple right here that this lines up with. And there's a second nipple right here that this lines up with. We'll drill a hole here, here, down here, here, and up behind here. We'll put our nutserts in, and this will seal this door up nice and tight. And because they're nutserts, they're gonna be threaded in, easily screwed and removable. But we'll show you that as time goes on. That one's yours, buddy. Enjoy it.
Now that we finished roadkilling the inside and the outside of the door, now we went and put a little bit of roadkill in the inside of the plastic panel, the Dean make, and in the outside we put the roadkill ultimate. That one is gonna be very solid. We already went and make our rivet inserts.
Gonna go with these Thesis 6.5s in the door, and even though they make a nice plastic pre-assembled panel that will house either a 6.5 or a 6x9 for the door, we're gonna make our own custom brackets because we want something a little bit more rigid than the 1/8 inch plastic. We're actually gonna make them out of 1/2 inch and then make stacks on there to get them to the right height we need in order to meet up with the door panel. But let's grab these and take a look at them. So those of you that aren't familiar with what the Thesis brand of Audison is, this is their top of the line flagship model. It's made out of the most exotic materials they can find to sound the best that they can possibly make. Inside you'll find the owner's manual and a box inside of a box. It's pretty impressive, there's no doubt about it. It's got a jewelry box style hinge here. Ooh, top piece of foam comes out, 2 grills. And these are not cheap plastic grills, these are aluminum grills. The speakers come with a plastic cover over them so you don't damage the surround. And there it is. You can see all the way through the speaker. So you can see my fingers up underneath there. The TH 6.5 SAX, or it should read SEX. Ooh, naughty, naughty. They're individually serial numbered. Also in the bag, we get some moisture stuff, some Allen head screws, along with the Allen bit for them, some speaker terminals. This uses the medium size speaker terminal on here, and they are the same on both left and right. A couple of parameters for this speaker. This is, of course, as we said, a 6.5. It has 300 watts of peak power with 150 of continuous. It's a 4 ohm. It has a frequency response of 40 to 4500 hertz. It has a 2-inch voice coil. The magnet is made out of neodymium. This plastic material that the cone is made out of is called TPX, and it has a weight of 2.67 pounds. And that would be why we're making new door pods for it. As you can see, it's a pretty serious speaker. It's going to be getting some pretty serious power, so we want to make sure that it is secure in that door as humanly possible. So let's head over to the routers and start cutting out some plastic and start getting the basic shape that we're going to need in order to mount these in the car. For this F-150, we're going to be using this template here to make our basic shape. And what we're going for is something like this here. This is made out of 1/2 inch. The sides are routed down a little bit in order to allow the screws to go in. This has a 1/2 inch spacer on top of it to give us a full 1 inch of clearance. Essentially, we could use this, but we're going to make new ones. So how we made this originally was we took the factory speaker and we mounted it on top of a piece of 1/4 inch. We like to use white for our templates. That way we know that they're templates and not something for the car. We screw it in place and or we remove this top foam gasket, which is a flat underneath it, and we allow us to put tape on it, which we could stick down. So it just depends on the speaker that we're doing. Then we take a tall router bit like this you can pick up at Mobile Solutions that has a lot of clearance here. You need a lot of neck. You can also do it with a router bit like this. It's a little thinner. There again, Mobile Solutions. And what you want to do is just make sure that you have enough so that your bearings will ride this, and then cut the material located beneath it. So while it's sitting like this, the bearings have to touch the top and cut. You can also just pick up a set of them already pre-made from Best Kits. It's the BK FSB 1501. To make these, we're going to need 2 pieces of 10.5 by 9 1/2 inch material. Just like the last piece we made, we're going to apply some template tape to all 3 pieces so we can router it out. Set your router height. You want your bearing to ride just this white material. when you're doing something that involves this bit coming out really far. When you're done, put it back in the table. When it's out like that, let's say something, you know, you're moving something around and it bumps that, you're gonna bend your router bit. You don't wanna do that because these things aren't cheap. The next step we're going to do is drill these holes for where the factory screws are. You'll notice there's no circle cut inside of this. We don't do that on our templates because we might be putting a different size speaker in there. We wanna make sure we have the right size diameter for the basket that we're gonna use. Playing down these sides to make it a little bit thinner, we're going to use the table saw to do that. We only need to take off and thin out the area where the screws are located, and we've come up about, not even 1/8 of an inch. We have the sides playing down. We can separate our pieces now. To make the hole, we need to find out how big it needs to be. For that, we're gonna use these two tools here. It's gonna allow us to slide this back and forth, and then with this tape measure, we can figure out what size this needs to be. You can also use a caliper attached at the end here to get the same measurements. I'm getting 5.67. Looking at this, I'm getting 5 5/8, about the same. And the reason why we need that is because we're going to enter that into the software on our computer, because we're going to laser cut out this size that we need. One other thing we want to do is scan in the shape of our template. When the template's scanned in, what we need to find out is the actual physical size of it. To do that, we'll take a measurement from here to here. We'll draw a line that's going to give us scale for our product, and we'll zoom out our picture so we can get it to scale. Once we have the height the way we want it, we know we're good. We can remove our scale line. To center it in the page, we're going to measure from this area here to this area here and draw a line just like before. We're going to measure the distance between these two and divide them in half, and that'll give us the length of our line. Roughly we have 6.4, so that's going to be 3.2. When we've checked both sides for accuracy, we can remove that line as well. When we have everything centered up, proceed now. So we have the hole that we're going to need, but we need to build this structure around here. Now that we've done that, we can cut out this shape and lay it over the top of this piece here. But we want to bring it in a little bit. We don't want it to be this exact same size. bring it in about 1/8 of an inch. This is the shape we want. That will copy this shape. It'll give us a little gap around it. This will be the bottom plate. Before we cut this out of our final product, we're just gonna cut it out of MDF and make sure it's the right shape and everything fits. Test fit wise for the shape is good. Nice and tight around the basket. This is definitely what we're going for. We need to figure out how thick this piece is gonna have to be, how many of these we're gonna have to router out. For that, we'll go back to our first template and put it in the door and see what that looks like. Now we're gonna add a little bit of beauty. To finish this off, we're gonna add in a F-150 logo and also a 5-star logo. Once we have everything inspected, lined up, the holes are in the right spot, it's time to export it and get it to the laser. On the laser, you have the 5-star and the F-150 are going to be engraved, and then those are in pink, and then the orange is going to be cut on the laser. And this is an image of the piece of product inside of the laser. Even though we are going to need 2 of these, we're going to print them 1 at a time, just to make sure that everything goes according to plan. It takes the same amount of time whether you're printing 1 or 2. We are going to be using 1/4 inch clear acrylic. Now because of the logos, this one's going to take some time. This one's going to take 9 minutes. It actually takes longer to do these than it does the whole thing. Our light is good. Test fitting exactly the shape we wanted. Screw holes line up. We've also added these 4 holes here, so this will allow us to screw this onto it. So even though I know no one is ever gonna see this, we wanted it to look really cool. And looking at this, how it has the clear color to it, we're gonna leave this clear. Originally I was gonna paint it, but now I just wanna leave it the clear to kind of mimic the speaker. To screw this in place, we're gonna use some M6 Allen bolts, just like this comes with. And we're going to use a drill bit that taps the threads into place. Now the last step in this is going to be routering out our hole for the speaker, so we need to drill a pilot hole, get over the router, and router this out. Definitely getting closer. The only thing we have left to do is get this speaker mounted in place, just like this. This speaker already has a gasket material on the back side, so we don't have to add anything. And we'd like our Allen screws to match up. That means we're gonna pre-drill our holes. We'll use a bit with the threads already on them. And there we go. Speaker 1 is all set and ready to put in. Now Fernando is going to go ahead and add a fast ring to it, because even as pretty as this is, it still needs to perform, and we want that fast ring on that, so when we put the door panel on, it'll push all that sound out into the car. We'll also put the other side of the fast ring on the back of it here, so that it will help to focus the energy into all that nice roadkill we put into it to keep the vibrations to a minimum. As fun as this project has been, I have more to do, so I'm going to get this over to him and start on the next one.
The rear door is the same as the front ones. It's 2 8mm in the back of this cover and the handle, 2 7mm in the bottom.
You just finished up the roadkill on the rear door and also the roadkill on the actual door panel itself. This is the back side of the rear door panel. The front looks identical to this. This is the roadkill ultimate. It has butyl, it has aluminum foil, and then it also has this foam barrier. It's a lot more rigid. Plus, if there's going to be any contact with metal or plastic or anything like that, it's got the foam to add in and make it, you know, so it doesn't rattle any. But all the speakers are in the doors. Let's take a look at what we got. Looking at the front door, the panel's in place. We had to take it off to check the depth of the speaker, and then he just put it back on. He's got ultimate on one side and stealth on the other. This is all stealth. What makes it stealth is it's black. Fast ring is now onto the mount that we made. The speaker's in place. Our wiring is done. Looking at the back door, it didn't get the cover here because it's not going to be needed. This is just a rear effects speaker. It's not going to be doing a ton of mid bass. That's what the front speaker's for. They are the Voce coaxial AVX 6.5. This is a 1.65 millimeter speaker, or a 6.5. It has a 4 ohm impedance and a 91 dB of efficiency. Opening it up, we have the owner's manual, warranty card, and another sticker. Cool. These come with a swivel tweeter that makes them easier to mount when you screw them into the door, so you can aim the tweeter up towards the listener that's going to be using them. In this case, they'll be aimed back towards the passenger of the rear of the vehicle, nowhere near the front. We don't want it to screw up our soundstage. And then the outboard crossover is located right here. It's attached to the physical speaker. These also have a maximum power handling of 200 watts. When comparing the coaxial with the front Voce tweeter, this is bigger than this one here. However, it is very similar in shape and make. It has the same swoosh. They just make a silver one on here. The basket is made out of aluminum. It's a really nice, heavy speaker too. These are just because he has kids and he wants them to have sound. Stealth the door, stealth the inside of the door, fast rings. This is all wired up and ready to go. Here's the front door with all the ultimate on it. Now we just got to get these back on, and this side will be done. Now, the last step, of course, is the tweeter, and that would be making a mount for the tweeter. As we said, we're going with the Voce AV 1.1 tweeters up in the factory location. That is that area right there behind the red thing, which means we need to get these off and figure out a bracket assembly for them. To get these off, this piece here on pop, pull it forward just a tad, and there's a 10mm bolt behind this side and that side. Now before we get started, let's take a look and see what comes in the box. Get a warranty card, an Audion sticker, oh that's cool, and the owner's manual. In the box, we have two mounts. Now these are designed for if you're gonna be putting them up in the dash, where let's say a 2.5 or a 3.5 is, you can use these to go into those factory screw holes. You also have some bezels to finish off the look if you're gonna be mounting them inside of, let's say, a door and you have to cut a hole or whatever. You have some angle pods. You have some tweeter locks here, along with a bunch of screws. And then the tweeter itself. Now a couple things about the tweeter. This is a 28mm tweeter, or a 1 1/8. It's 4 ohm impedance, a 92 dB efficiency rating, and has a peak power handling of 180 watts. The mounting depth is 5/8 of an inch, and it has a circumference of 1 7/8. Now looking at these closely, this bar does not look like it's designed to come off, which shouldn't be a problem for us. Take a closer look at our forward A-pillar. This just uses a standard 2-screw mount, very similar to what comes in the box. Wow, this might be easier than I was thinking. These actually line up with our factory screws. And it screws right in place. The only thing is that these are really thin. Although they are very strong, they are very thin. What I'm thinking is maybe a hybrid between this tweeter mount here and this ring here, so is that we get these fatter ends, but we get this bigger hole. It would look something like this, but all tweeter. But this will give us a great place to start because we know we have the right everything. So after a little bit of math and some figuring out, this is the shape we've come up with. our tweeter will lock into place, and then it'll line up with the same locations that these went ahead and attached themselves into the mount. This one, of course, we just made out of wood because it's our template, as you can hear in the background, and laser one out of 1/4 inch acrylic. It's a little bit thicker. It'll give something more for this to bite into. This is the finished product here. We used 1/4 inch, but you'll notice this is thinner because I needed the tweeter to inset some, so I took it down to an 1/8 inch here. How we did that is over on the router. We still have the other side to do, so join me and I'll show you what we did. We set off a rabbiting bit here, so it only takes this thickness off here. We just needed to take that thickness off on this area here and here, and it'll thin this down. With that trimmed out and all the paper off, we can put our tweeter in. It fits in nice and tight. I mean, really tight. That's the joy of having the laser. It cuts really close. Set it in place. There we go. Our tweeter is screwed into the factory location, just like the factory tweeter was. The one thing we are going to do is we are going to take it back off. We're going to add a little bit of foam around it so that it helps, just like the fastenings in the doors, to push that through into the car. So now we have the foam on. We filled in all those gaps around it, even better than the factory. I'm gonna get this over to Fernando so we can finish it up. The next step in this adventure is to find a home for the amplifiers, which is gonna be behind the seat. There's an amplifier and a subwoofer back there, which we've already taken out and I didn't film. Didn't think about it. The amplifier mounts right here and the subwoofer goes along here. Once you remove it, it frees up all that space and it basically looks like just any other Ford F-150. Over here is some jacks and whatnot. That may need to come out because we have two very long amplifiers that are gonna go in here. And speaking of the amplifiers, now would be a good time to go ahead and take a look at what we have. We have two of them. Bring them both out. Voce AV 5.1K HD 5-channel amplifier with digital inputs. 1650 watts of total power. This is a full DA amplifier. Now what does that mean? We'll get to it in a second. In the box is the amplifier, naturally. They do make two versions of this amplifier. This is the HD version, and they make the non-HD version, which just has regular RCAs. If you look at this end of the amplifier, you'll notice it does not have any RCAs at all. It just has your inputs and your outputs with your AD and your AC link cables. On this end, you have your battery, ground, and cap, speaker terminals, and your remote input. On the top, you have gain controls for channel A, B, and C, but when we're looking at the side of the amplifier, you also see you have the ability to turn the gains off. Inside is a bag of parts. We have the quick start guide, test tones and owner's manual, warranty, bag of screws and fuse with Allen key. And then there's two cables in the bag. They're about 1 meter long, both of them. And what they're for is here on the end where you have your AD link and your AC link. That's where those go. Now these are gonna go off to the Bit HD DSP. For right now though, we'll just unplug these and set them back in the box. Let's take a look at the quick start guide. It gives you your dimensions. It's 18.5 inches by 8.66 inches. So that's your length and your width. There's 4 screws that hold it in place, and of course these are removable panels. Underneath the removable panel here is where the fuse goes. The capacitor input that we were talking about is for adding just that, a stiffening capacitor if you need one. They also give you a speaker cable chart, length versus size, and also a power supply cable. There again, length versus current draw in the owner's manual. It talks about your remote input output when connecting to a bit. Then they give you ideas of how to use the amplifier. Things to use and things not to use. Underneath this panel, there is an LCD display screen that will allow you to go through and set them up. And on the last page, it gives you if you're just going to be going out of a head unit into a bit, out into the system, and how you configure this as just one 5-channel amplifier. So there's a lot of helpful information in here, and I'm sure you can download this guide online if you want to get more in depth with it, because they give you this, which is the full version of it. Most computers now don't actually read these anymore, so I'm sure it's on their website. Test tracks, we have a sine sweep, white noise, pink noise, sine wave of 50 kilohertz at 0 dB, and a sine wave of 1 kilohertz, 0 dB. Those are both 2 minutes. The pink noise is 10 minutes. So that'll be helpful. Now last but not least, let's talk about why we picked this amplifier and the actual amount of power it has. So this is designed to work between 11 and 15 volts. It's not stop start approved. This truck, we're bypassing the stop start. Idle current is 3 amps. Idle current when off is 0.02 milliamps. Basically nothing. Consumption at 14.4 volts. Max musical power. That means this thing's just blasting away is 110 amps. Power output on this amplifier, it is a 5-channel. It has a Class A stage for channel 1 and 2, Class AB stage for channel 3 and 4, and a Class D stage for channels 5, or A, B, and C. Channel A is 75 by 2 at 4 ohm. Channel B is 140 by 2 at 4 ohms. And C is 600 by 1 at 4 ohms, 1000 by 1 at 2 ohms. This is going to be powering the tweeters, the rear speakers, and the subwoofer. And that's it. What's going to power the front door speakers? Well, let's take a look at that. For those, we're going to be using this guy, the Voce AV Duo. I know, right? It's tough. 900 watt power amplifier. It is 260 watts times 2 at 4 ohms, which is what we're going to be running it. And it is just the same size as the other amplifier. In the box, we get a similar quick start guide, a sticker, a warranty card, fuse and screws, and a CD. Let's see what's on this CD. We get the same 5 test tracks and the owner's manual. This amplifier is the exact same size as the 5.1. Looking at the end, we have essentially the same type of connections. We have battery, ground, and the capacitor input. We have left positive negative, and we have right positive negative, our remote turn on. Flipping it over, this one has RCAs. Uh-oh, what does that mean? It also has a gain control on top. It's a 2-channel amplifier. We're gonna be doing a bit system with no RCAs. So what we need to do now is pull out this input stage and put the digital input stage in. This guy right here, the AV bit in HD. This is designed to turn this amplifier into the bit system. As you saw, now it has those same ends that were in the 5.1. It also has those same 2 cables that came with the other. And of course, very helpful instructions. We'll just set this aside because once we get it apart, we'll put the RCAs in the box. Let's get started, shall we? According to the instructions, we want to start on the bottom and we'll remove these 2 screws right here. It is a number 2 Phillips. Keep rocking it back and forth a little bit. That's it. So with it out, you can see there's a lot of little tiny pins that have to line up. Definitely don't force the issue when pulling it in and out. Just gently work on it. Now it doesn't show that you need to remove this top piece right here, but it did make it easier to get in there and just kind of like push both at the same time. Grab our new unit. Has the same pins. Inspect the pins, just give them a once over, make sure that they're all straight, just in case something happened in shipping. Line it up. There are 2 little grooves. There's a little groove here and one matching on the other side. Put our old preamp section back in the bag. Replace the 2 screws. And now we're full bit. Put our cover back on here for now. And now we have the same inputs on the end as we did on our 5.1. This amplifier's job is to just run the mid bass in the door. This is the Bit 1 HD. Has Toshlink input and obviously the ability to do a full DA system. This is going to be controlling all our stuff. Now in the box, there again, it's your owners and you get a card. That's right, this is a special purchase. Serial number and model number, and you can register it. This is our input side here. It has 6 inputs. Speaker level input, the controller, the DRC, I'll show you in a minute, auxiliary, remote in and out, Toshlink inputs. On the back side, we have 13 outputs, and our AD and AC link outs 1 and link outs 2. These are what's gonna go off to our amplifiers. This is our DRC controller. Owner's manual with 2 CDs. We have 2 AC link cables here. we have two AD link cables here. So these are gonna be longer than the 1 meter set that came with the amplifiers. The RVA cable, screws and mounting brackets for the DRC. The DRC cable, it's a phone style connector on one end, and this end here is what plugs into the side of that. We also have an aux to RCA adapter, and then some mounting screws. Now if you haven't picked up on it, Audison does really good at putting everything in bags. USB cable for programming, our speaker level input plug, then our aux, optical, and 4-pin connector that was on the other side. So tons of cables come in the box. Warranty card, test tracks. This has the same 5 tracks, but also adds a pulse track, I'm guessing for polarity. And this is the same as this. This one does have the owner's manual and Bit HD software on it. This is the owner's manual for the DRC, which is the little controller. It's also a giant roadmap. Audison loves to do these type of owner's manuals. I guess if you want to see everything all at once, you're golden. Oh boy, this would make a really cool poster just to hang on the wall. All right. So the 4-pin plug, according to this, is to do like switches to control your inputs. Aux input, RCA, USB for programming, dates on and off, low level, 6 inputs there, high level, and then our AD and AC connections. Our Toshlink inputs here. This is an overview of everything. Definitely want to take a look at it. We'll set this into our stack of owner's manuals that we have right now. And last but not least is the Nav TV Zen A2B. This is what's going to make all this happen, is this little box right here. That's it. I know, right? If you guys have heard us talk about Amp Pro or AR, Zen is another version of that. It allows us to integrate into the factory stereo and give us a preamp section, not doing high level to low level. It takes out all the EQ curves and all the nonsense and just gives us a nice clean output. In this case, a Toshlink, which is gonna go into that Bit HD. But if you didn't want to do that, this will give you 12 channels of output. You have the factory plug here. This ties into the existing wiring, plugs into this. So essentially it is a plug and play. You have the USB for updates, and on the bottom of the box here is the owner's manual. On the side of the unit, this USB here is for the factory BO system to plug into. So all the factory connections will be on this side. This harness is going to plug in here. And then on this side, these are all your preamp inputs as well as your Toshlink. The 12 RCAs that this come with, 1, 3, and 5 are left and right front. 2, 4, and 6 are also left and right front. That'd be if you have a 3-way set. 7 and 8 are rear doors. 9 and 10 are left rear center, right rear center, 11 is center, and 12 is sub. Now with the software, it does give you some options for the preamp outputs. If there is some issues with the phone, volume and whatnot. But yeah, fun. Now these are all the pieces that have to fit on that back panel back there. That's why I just went ahead and got them all out. We have to figure out how these are all gonna fit. Now right off the bat, the A to B has to be here because that's where the factory wiring is. Right now it's just tucked over there. That's small, that can go right there. Having the DSP close to it's probably a good idea. That way we don't have to go with a super long Toshlink cable to it. And then the 2 amplifiers are gonna go somewhere along this way. I'm gonna go ahead and fold down this seat and remove the jack because I know I'm gonna need that space. As you guys know, these amplifiers are rather big. And we have 2 of them. We have the processor and we have the little Zen piece, plus we have the power distribution. We have this one little space back here on both sides. We've gone ahead and covered these things in blue tape, and then we put rubber over the screw bolts because we don't want to scratch these things. And I've been staring at this for the better part of a half hour, just kind of like moving things around. And I think I've come up with a preliminary idea. What I want to do is I want to cut off all the way across the bottom portion of this carpet. There's a couple air vents behind here which we're not worried about because we're going to have plastic panels that are going to go here. They're not going to be in the way, and we'll leave breather rooms so that they can still vent gases. When you shut the doors, the windows don't blow out and all that. But I think doing that is going to free up some depth. The hard part I'm having is that, like, real estate this way is tough, but we might be able to go deep with real estate, maybe mount some of the fuse holders and stuff back behind. Still accessible, but where the inputs and outputs don't actually get in the way and we don't need room for them. To start, what we want to do, I have a fresh razor blade. Anytime you're cutting stuff like this, fresh razor blade. We're going to cut. Now, there's a taper that goes down like this. I want to leave that so that our plastic can go up to it and there'll be like a seam. Naturally, this panel's in my way, so I'll remove these panels on both sides. That way I can expose all this area, and then we'll cut it all up. The carpet's out the way I wanted it to come out, so we just cut along here. We cut underneath this. It's still gonna be tight. My plan is to start on that side and build from the passenger side across over here to the driver's side. Now, thankfully, both the amps are the same size. We only have to tape up one of them to get us going. First piece is going to be a 12 by 22 piece. And the idea for that is that it's going to sit out here in this area. Panel 1 is in place. It's going to attach here. There's also some mounting down here that is holding it up, and then we put a brace behind it. So this is, once this gets screwed in, this isn't going to go anywhere. We're going to keep going that way and figure out the next step. So this next piece is going to be 23 by 11 and a half. Now I put a little notch in it here in the bottom corner because this is going to slide into our other piece, and we put that 1/2 inch on the bottom. So this should allow it to go inside of it. We just have to cut out the piece for the motor. Alright, the second piece is in. This one was a little bit different. It tongues behind the first piece. So it's like this piece will have to go in, then this piece, And now let's work on the last piece over on the corner. So I went next door and I grabbed a power distribution block and a fuse distribution block, both 4. Even though we only have 2 amplifiers, we do have the DSP, and also in the instructions for the Zen, it says there is a chance you may need to use the same power source as you're using for the amplifiers. Just have it in case we need it. And now the plan is to make a mount that allows them to sit right here behind everything. Let's cut some more plastic. We have the basic shape of the panel that's going to go here. This is going to be the window for our fuse distribution access. This will screw in here. We need to make a mount that's going to hold these in place while this is out. My thought is it'd be nice if these could just stay here, and then we can bring the wires over and attach them into this while they're permanently affixed here. To do that, it's going to be kind of tricky though, because I need to come up with a mounting system that holds place. I might be able to make a panel that comes straight up and 90s into this, and then we could put some rivets into here and then hold that thing in. That actually sounds like a really good idea. Plan is to put a bottom on it that will press up against this to hold it all where it needs to go. That way nothing's gonna rattle. It all just kind of tongue and grooves into one another. This panel is going to screw up into this brace right here. What we've done is we've put a bend in it, we've heat formed it to the angle, and we've pre-drilled 2 holes in it. We're going to use nutserts, but to find the spots like where we need to drill, using a self-tapping screw and screwing this in place saves us some time. Now we already have 2 holes in there, and we can come back in with our drill them out bigger, and put our nutserts in. And we know they're exactly where we need it to be because we've already had this in its spot. I need to position these blocks so that one, we can replace the fuses if we need to, and also we can get our fingers in there to unpinch the cases off of the top. The only thing I'm kind of concerned with is, like, I know it's not going to go anywhere. I just don't know if I need more bracing. This corner right here is kind of loose. Have a piece come up, over, and attach to that. After many trips back and forth to the saw and the routers, we finished the mount for the amplifiers. Not mounting the amplifiers, just got the mount done. Now the mount is going to start on this piece here first. That'll go in and that'll have the Duo attached to it, and that'll lock in place first. The second one will be attached here and will tongue into that one. And then the third will be the processor and the Zen, and of course the power wire that's going to stay put. So when we pull this panel off, those will still be there so that we can run our 0 gauge in. Our power wire is going to run across the top here, down and over. All that is just going to go up behind there. We don't have any RCAs or anything like that. We just have the data connections that are going to come out of the bit and then into these 2 amplifiers. The speaker wires we're going to run are going to go down this side for that side, and then come down this side over here for this side. We'll also have the DRC controllers going to come down this side as well. But that's it. That's how that's going to go. And each piece is going to lock into one another. Like there's a screw there. I have to drill that one over there, one over here. And that'll hold the whole thing in place. Now the fun part starts of getting the amplifiers onto the boards and getting everything wired up. Dividing the amplifier into 3 pieces in order for it to fit in the car, because we needed the staggered layers to optimize the amount of room we have, is also making mounting them a bit of a challenge. But we have the first side done, so we have that passenger side all done, and this is it here. The ADAC link cables are zip tied along behind the panel here and come out right here. Once this slides into place, we can clip those in. We're still working on the middle section. The power wire comes out of the top, and that is going to be zip tied in along that frame rail on the top there. This is the passenger side mid-base wire. The driver's side mid-base wire is right here, and we'll run behind this along with the rest of these wires. But this one is done. We need some room because this thing is huge, so we're gonna set this in the car and get it out of the way. One other thing we need to do in the car is we're going to remove this portion of it for the actual wiring, because this is where we plan on zip tying in that power wire so that it can come down and attach into here. Fernando has started on the battery. We have the dual run of 0 gauge in, and trust me, it's a beast to get into this. One other thing before I get started back onto the amp board. Last night I took one of the little plexiglass plates home, this guy right here, and the purpose for that was we want to make something custom to go there. So right now we're making a test board. So when using the laser, acrylic is expensive, wood is not, so you make a mock-up first just to see if it all fits. If the measurements are right, you can go back and make an acrylic one. This is the factory piece here. This is our wood template. Let's test it on the amp. This is the factory, obviously. And this will be our new one. There's 2 of these on here, and they're both the same size. So we've come up with this Raptor one here, and the second one will be this 5-star F-150. I'll go ahead and get those loaded into the Glowforge, and while I'm wiring up the amp rack, they can do their thing. Engraving is what takes the longest amount of time when using the laser. To cut out that little wood piece, it took like 1.5 minutes. Add the engraving into it, you're probably looking about 20 minutes, depending on how complex the engraving is. Just to give you an idea if you're thinking about getting into the laser business. All right, now let's get back to wiring that amp up. And through the magic of time lapse, the second amplifier is wired up. Let's take a look. We have the ADAC cables. They wrap around and they come out over here. This is where the DSP is going, so these are just gonna pop in from behind. Piggyback, the way the processor works is channel 1 through 8 can all come off of output 1, and then output 2 is for 9 through 13. Since we're only doing 7 channels, we can piggyback these 2 amplifiers on top of one another. The 2 from the Duo will just plug right into here. All we've had to use is the meter length set. The power is going to go to those distribution blocks that sit about here. We have the rear and the tweeter bundled here, and the opposite side is right here. What we have to do now is get into the car. I'm gonna pull this out, set this amplifier in place over there, tongue in the other one, and just get everything laid out and their wires zip tied up. Once that's in, we can hook up the power, and the last thing to go in will be the processor, which I haven't even started working on yet. That's gonna be last, because I need to get these in so that when he's done with the battery, which is coming along nicely, power and ground come out of here, are screwed into the frame rail. Right now they're just hanging out over here on the battery. This took, what did we decide, 18 or 19 feet?
Well, because how we put the distribution block, it's 18 feet. Normally, it's 19 feet.
And we have the fuse holder mount coming in here. What he likes to do is this obviously gets attached, it runs around, and then the ground also gets zip tied into this, so it's one big heavy duty housing.
So power and ground comes over here, goes here, from here to the battery, so it's gonna be short and go straight to the battery in the ground.
Once we get that done, of course, we'll come back and take another look at that. Right now, I need to grab a panel tool because I have to remove the clips. So we're gonna use this guy and we're gonna pull the remaining 2 clips. So there's one here. Wow, there's only 1 clip remaining. So we're gonna pull this one remaining. Probably need to pull this out and we'll get the carpet out of the way. The 2 amplifiers are set in place. One thing I wanted to show you, if you look right there, that is a floor bolt. The amplifier, it sits back another 1/8 of an inch, but right now it's resting on that bolt. What you do is that is a piece of 0 gauge sheathing over the bolt. On this side, this is just some flex tube lubing. Because there's 2 pieces of seat that get in the way. You just put that over that. Not that there's a full finger there. But while we were designing and getting everything set up, put this over those 2 metal pieces to keep it from scratching the bottom of the amplifiers. Put this over that bolt. Went black. Originally it was blue because that's all I had laying around, but we went black so that you won't even notice it. It can stay there because I want to leave it there in case we ever have to service these and I have to pull this amp down. I don't want to scratch the amp at a later date. The speaker wire is run over here. What I did was I only put a minimal amount of sheathing on it, so just up to these points. Now I'm going to finish off the sheathing and run it all the way to the front because they were on 2 separate amplifiers. Now I can combine the front run. The rear is going to be tapped in right here and the fronts are going to be tapped in and the kick panel right over there. At this point, I'm going to get the 4 gauge up and over and all zip tied in place. Skipping through time ahead, we have the last panel all wired up. This panel has the Bit 1 HD on it, as well as the Zen 8-to-B. The Zen 8-to-B is going to talk to our factory radio and give us our output. That output is going to be a Toshlink, which is light. So we're going to be using the light to come out of here and come into the inputs on this. That input is located right here. This is the cable for the DRC, which is our controller. The A-to-B has a remote turn on out that's going to activate this, and then the power and ground is going to go to our distribution block. Looking at the back side, what you see here is the Toshlink. If you'll notice, it is in a nice big loop. It's light. This is a tube of light that's in here. We want to make sure that there are no bends, no sharp 90s or anything like that. That means I went a little bit longer with it than I normally would because I only have this far to go. I wanted to make sure that I could get a nice bends. I don't want anything tight. These are the connections that are going to plug into the factory, and then this is going to be for the DSP. Over here at our power distribution, we have the other end for it. If you'll notice, we have the 2 big wires which are going off to our big amplifiers, and these 2 skinny wires here are going to power our peripherals. The A to B will get power from the factory plug, which is sitting right here. However, they do mention that in some cases you may need to connect it to the same power as the amplifiers. So for that, put a connection point in it if we need to do that. Otherwise, it'll just chill out and not get used for anything. That brings us to our third and final piece that we get to put in. Also, the power wire is zip tied up in place and hidden. Now I need to get this piece of carpet put back on and get this piece in place and attach everything up, and we can finalize that. Fernando is almost done running all the speaker wires. We do still have to run the DRC wire, so we can't put this together yet. And he's getting all the wires connected in the corner there in the kick panel. The rear speaker wires are hidden up in here somewhere. Can't see them. That's why they're hidden. That side of the car is all set and ready to go. Let's take a look at the battery, because while I was finishing up wiring these guys, he went ahead and finished up wiring up the battery. Power wire comes down, it loops around here. That brings our ground into position right onto there, as well as our power comes back around and connects right there. This slides into the battery box and holds everything nice and tight and in place. One of the questions we get asked a lot about F-150s is, why do we run a ground to the battery? And the simple answer is because it's aluminum, and we go through that whole thing. We talk about how the car, it's more glued together than welded together. Let me show you something. So back here, right there, that guy, that is a factory ground point, and there's a matching one right over here. Now, how you want to think of those two ground points is like this. When you go into a fuse box, let's say you're on a 10 amp circuit, all right? And you need to pull 5 amps off of that 10 amp circuit. What's a 10 amp circuit? Will you be able to pull 5 amps off of it? Yes, because you have a 10 amp circuit. These are kind of like that, in that this is only designed to handle the amount of amperage that the manufacturer saw fit. Unlike in the past where there was a factory ground in a car, you could go to it because you knew it was a good ground point. These are now rated ground points. So this ground point might only be good for, let's say, 10 amps or 15 amps or 30 amps, but not for the 110 amps that we're gonna be putting in this car. That would be a bad ground point. You get too much resistance between here and the battery. And when you get too much resistance, bad things start to happen. One of the things in the A to B NAV TV piece that they tell you is that if you have a resistance higher than 1 ohm, you need to go to the battery. And we've had this discussion with them before. This is our first A to B piece. And if you want to get anywhere with them, meaning if you have any issues, the first question they ask is, did you ground it to the battery? The answer to that is yes. So when you're doing one of these cars, just do yourself a favor, go right to the battery. The frame rail, no. Battery, yes. Does that make sense? Yeah. Fernando says yes. And the last piece of the puzzle has fallen into its spot. There it is, all plugged in. Everything is screwed in place. All the panels are attached. So now we just have one big amp rack. It's attached here, it's attached there. There's 2 more attachments over there. Each piece is attached. I still haven't put this one on because I haven't programmed the amplifiers yet. The Zen is all plugged in. The last thing to go in are these 2 cables here. According to the instruction manuals, when programming the bit HD, the last thing you want to do is plug these in. You want to plug it in, tune it, meaning set your crossover points and where everything needs to go. Finalize it, turn it all off, let it reboot, and then you can get into plugging this in and hearing it. So we still got a long way to go as far as that, but we had to make a pit stop because there's one other thing that needs to be taken care of, and that is for this guy, the little DRC. For the most part, all he's gonna be using this for is subwoofer volume control. This has presets and all that other fun stuff, but we're not gonna be doing that. We're only doing one source, and it fits perfectly right here. This is the gauge cluster, and it's gonna fit right there. But what I need to do first is get this shape and get it into the computer so that I can replicate it and then mount this inside of it. This is gonna take about 2 pieces a 1/4 inch. The plan is to cut this out, put it onto this piece of paper, and then we'll scan it into the computer, and that way we can just trace it. I'm using just regular blue painter's tape and a painting knife. This has a really nice edge and will get in there and form that crease. You also want to make sure you have a very sharp blade, because all you want to do is cut the paper and not the plastic behind it. It was kind of funny going to the office supply store and seeing if they just had a regular flatbed scanner without a printer, because I didn't need the printer, I just need the scanner. We have our 2 final pieces. Perfect height. As you can see, there's a slight stagger. We just have to fasten it all together and get it back into the car. Once all the pieces are stacked together, we have a DRC mounted into the dash. Simple and easy to get to. And along with that in the dash, that takes us to pretty much the end of the installation portion of it. Now is the laptop time. We have to plug it in and set up the bit HD. For that is a Windows computer only. Let's get started. Now, like most times when you first connect up a DSP, it's gonna wanna do some form of a software update. If yours didn't, well, check. Because I don't think I've put a DSP in yet that hasn't needed a software update. Have you?
No.
Never. Now when you hook up the bit HD, you have to go through the configuration wizard. Every DSP is gonna have one of those. And the idea behind it is to tell the DSP what it's connected to and what it's doing. So for example, channel 1 is gonna be tweeter. Channel 2 is gonna be the passenger tweeter. You have to tell it these things. Some DSPs will have default settings that you can just out of the box click the number 1 and go. Most of them are going to require you to do some form of a setup. That's where we're at right here. This is also one of the only DSPs. There are a few that allow you to choose if you want to do an IIR or an FIR. Google it. We're going to do an IIR configuration with this. We're not going to be using any of the input setups because we're just doing one source and we're doing a Toshlink. We're just going to bang through this. Question 2, optical, no auxiliaries. Next. This page here, master input configuration. What this is telling you is that you're just doing a left and a right because a Toshlink is just that. It's just left and right. There's no front rear, there's nothing. It's just an audio out of left, audio out of right. And this is the indication that they give you for full range. You also tell it what side of the car you're gonna be sitting on. This page is gonna tell us how many channels we're gonna use. So we're gonna be doing tweeter, mid-bass, rear fill, and subwoofer. The only caveat on this that's kind of weird is here on the rear. We're not gonna be using a woofer. We're gonna be using the mid-range so we can do away with the woofer. Even though it's not going to be active, you have to tell it that you're gonna be using a tweeter and a mid-range. That way it'll go ahead and set up a full range output as opposed to a bandpass. Like if I just pick a mid-range, I can put a bandpass filter in there and not give me a tweeter capability. Now I can go in and adjust it, of course, and change that. That's the whole purpose of a pre-setup, is to try to get as close to what you want as possible. Now you just tap on the speaker and it shuts everything off. So we have a front tweeter, a mid woofer, tweeter, mid-range, subwoofer. Select next. This is where you tell it that you're going to be using passive crossovers, this little drop box here. This is just like on the Forza. You tell it if you're going to be doing passive crossover networks. Now it knows that that channel is going to be full range from the mid-range up. Channel assignment. We have to tell it what we want to be what. We're going to reassign these because I don't like their configuration. I want my tweeters to be 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7. It's just how my brain works. System setup complete. Now I will tell you, setting it up with the Toshlink was way easier than if we were to have to do high level or any of the other choices. Because with the Toshlink, there's nothing to choose from. It's a full bandwidth signal coming out of the radio, so there's no de-equalization, there's no all-pass filters, there's nothing needed to have to deal with. So let's streamline the input. The other cool thing is if you did need all that, this has de-equalization. It has a ton of features for integrating into a high-level factory system where you have to do summing and all that. After all, this is one of the most advanced DSPs on the market. But we got lucky. Now what we need to do is finalize to bit 1 HD. When you get the basic setup done on one of these, they extremely recommend, it's in the owner's manual, that you do that. Shut it down, let everything go to sleep, let it do its thing, and then wake it back up. And now you can get to the fun part where we're going to adjust all our settings. And here we are. Now, I don't know what happened between the last scene and now, but I can tell you a lot of time has transitioned. You might have noticed it was dark and now it's light. We're on day 4 of the build right now. Everything is in and everything finally works. Let me explain works. When you're doing a system of any kind of this scale, it doesn't matter. Once you get past having a radio and an amplifier, if you add a DSP, a summing device, or anything like that in the mix, it becomes a more complex system because you have to get things all to work properly. If you're using a factory radio, that adds another little hiccup into this. Any one of these that we do, we put in a certain amount of time, and we call it the debugging time. And the debugging time is when we go through and start with something as basic as, do we have audio? Does the radio turn on? Does the amplifier go to sleep when you shut the doors? amplifiers. All the things that you need to step through is the lane departures, the backup camera still work, all those little things. Also is making sure that the equipment turns on. I mean, sometimes you have to crawl before you can actually walk. And in this case, we were barely moving. A couple things happened last night that slowed down the production, but we expected it. One, the nav A to B piece wasn't working with remote turn on, which wasn't a problem because we could still go into the Audion piece, and through the DRC, you could turn on the unit. It was late, we knew nav TV wasn't open. I wasn't stressed out about it because, hey, you know, it's probably something simple, and it turned out to be something simple. It was, okay, now we need to go through the process of setting up the DSP. As we showed you, we went through and we did the I/O setup. The next step on that is going to the actual amplifiers and telling the amplifiers what is doing what. Well, that means we have the two amplifiers. The 5.1 tweeters rear, the 2 front mid bass. The 5.1 is also going to do the sub. So we needed to tell the digital output of the bit HD that those are the channels on which amplifier are going to do what. So you have to go in and program them. Let me show you. So underneath the cool beauty panel is this little display screen here, and it says AV2. That's telling you that this is a Duo 2-channel amplifier. It also has the option for the Uno, the Quattro, and the 5.1 because this is the card we slid into place. On the 5.1, when that powers up, the screen automatically just says 5.1 because it was pre-programmed from the factory. You hit up the setup menu button, you go up and down, and you hit enter. The first question it asks you obviously is what amp it is. The second question it asks you are you in stereo or mono. And then the third question it asks you is what channels are going to go to which amplifier. So in this case you have your choice of 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6 and 7. We needed the Duo to be channels 3 and 4, which were the mid bass. And that's kind of where we hit a hiccup. We couldn't get the channels to go where we wanted them to go. So we called up Electromedia and talked to the boss, Lance Doss, who is like, he's the guy, he's been on the show, super dude. Turned out it was something we just totally missed. It was a software update. Top corner here on the software, it gives you the firmware of all the units being used, along with the serial numbers. As it turned out, our DRC needed a software update. We had done the software update for the bit when we plugged it in, like we said. All DSPs need software updates. The DRC isn't part of that. That's a separate update. Once we did that and then we reset the module so that it saw the new firmware, everything worked according to plan and it was wonderful. But at that point we were kind of done because the nav TV wasn't working, and what it wasn't doing wasn't giving us remote turn on output. We had to wait till this morning to call nav TV and figure out what it was. Talk to Bob. Bob's best. It turned out that our remote turn on was pinned in the wrong hole. It was next to the red accessory. It needed to be next to the black ground. So pulled it out, put it down, magically everything turned on. Now we're to the point where we can start tuning. We're gonna do our basic setup. We need to do polarity checks. We need to make sure all 4 corners are playing the way they're supposed to. We need to put the driver's seat back into the factory position, and we need to measure for time alignment. The customer's more Fernando's height than mine, so I'll put him in the seat and then I'll measure. Faded to the rear, we should have no sound because this is the Toshlink output. It only has front, left, and right. All the speakers are making sound and all the speakers are in the right side of the car, which is good. Now we need to do some polarity testing. All our speakers are popping the same direction. That is a good thing. Like we said, it doesn't matter if they're all red, red, green or green, green, red, just so they all go the same direction, or at least the direction you want them to go in. If you want the dash to be out of polarity with the doors, that's fine. It's up to you. Just make sure you know and it's not just a wild guess. 2 of our 3 pre-tests are done. Polarity is good, balance and fader works. One other thing I wanted to stop right here and mention. When working with a factory radio or a aftermarket radio that you're going to an external DSP, make sure the radio is set to flat in the bass, treble, or EQ settings. And also make sure it's set flat on each source. If your unit has a feature called source tone adjust, that means the source dictates the tone. You can adjust each source differently. Kenwood does that. A lot of radios do that. We've checked it in this one. Fernando likes to do that when he's pulling the car around if he knows we're going to do it in a system, because towards the end. It could be several days. Just get it done right off the bat. The third thing on this is we've got the seat lined up. I need to measure Fernando for distance. Bit of a tip, you're measuring to the center of the cone of the speaker, the little dome in the center. That is not located on this surface here. It's located about 2 or 3 inches behind that. When you're taking your measurement, make sure you add in anywhere between 2 to 3 inches of extra measurement for that. If you want to be super like, you can take the measurements before you actually put the door panels back on. Once you get those numbers, you need to enter them into the DSP software. This is where it gets kind of tricky. You need to read your DSP software and see what kind of numbers they're looking for. Some of them, you can simply just take the numbers, put them in, and they'll do all the math for you, meaning they'll find the 0 point. The farthest speaker from your location, they'll subtract that number and add extra footage. So for example, if this was 60 inches away and this was 40 inches away, the number of delay is 20. Certain DSPs will figure that out for you, do the math, and add that delay. They'll take the 20 inches, they'll multiply it by milliseconds of delay, and boom, you're done. Other DSPs want you to do the math beforehand. So 60, 20, they want you to put in 20. They want the 0 point. Some, they actually want you to figure out the milliseconds. So you have to then figure out the distance, find the 0 point, get that number, and then multiply it by time, and then put that number in. It's important to read the instructions. For this, we get the easy. All we have to do is put in the numbers. After all of that information has been put in, it's time to add in the microphone and move everything outside of the car. So we have the RTA connected here, our software up and running here. We're gonna play some pink noise, and we're gonna start the equalization process. Now when doing the equalization, we're gonna start with the passenger side, and then we'll come over to the driver's side. I feel like it's the after hours at a party. We got laptops and cables everywhere. So just spent the better part of a couple hours getting this thing tuned in the way I want it. Now, one of the things that I want to do, use a feature in this EQ that is called Master EQ. Master EQ is a global EQ. That means you have your EQ for each speaker and you get it to where you want it, and you get the alignment good, and you get it sounding the way it's supposed to. But then you just want to sprinkle on a little bit of salt and pepper just to make, you know, a little bit here and there. So you want a little bit more treble, or you want a little bit more mid, or depending on the songs you're listening to. You have the curve that you want, but you want to color it just a little bit. Add some more character to the music. So to do that, we're gonna actually hop into the car and listen to it. That's where the ears come in. Looks great on the RTA, it sounds good, but you just wanna see if you can push it just a little bit further, get a little bit more out of it. If you're sitting in here and listening to it for various, you know, hopping in, jumping in, pink noise, back and forth, wow is the easiest way to describe this. I mean, it's so clear. It's one of those systems that it's so clear that you almost wish there was a little bit of a distortion just so you know it was getting loud, because what happens is it's really loud and it doesn't feel loud. So you go to talk to the person next to you and you're like, then you're yelling at them and you're like, oh my God, that's like really, really loud. So essentially what you do, you copy a preset from A over to one of the other presets. That gives you the ability to toggle back and forth. So you have what is your main tune, and then your salt and pepper tune. Then you can make multiple versions of that. There was like a 2.5, 3 hour period between when I got done tuning it till right now. Fernando hasn't heard it in probably 4 hours. He's not picking it up till tomorrow morning. We have fresh ears. We're just gonna give it one final where we're just gonna listen to everything. We're gonna listen to some Maroon 5, we're gonna listen to some jazz, we're gonna listen to some rock. We're gonna listen to pretty much everything that we have and just make sure that it hits all the spots that we want it to hit. I can tell you right now, and you might agree with me, it's so clear.
Yeah, I'm like right here, and I know on this side it's like, but you can hear this side perfectly nice. It's
like every instrument. It's crazy. And keep in mind, it's a Class A on the tweeters. We have a ton of power going to those mid bass. I don't know if we mentioned the sub is actually a T1 Rockford truck box, shallow mount. He just wanted something for bass. I know you guys, but hey, YouTube, copyright.
Yeah, sorry. And I mean, it doesn't matter. You guys not gonna hear.
You're not gonna enjoy
this. Yeah, no.
Alright, well, we're gonna enjoy it. So
I'll let you know how.
You let them know. Okay. Now one last piece before we wrap it up. Fernando's inside jamming out. Because he's just going with the basic Rockford box, the front of it's carpeted black, we decided to make this guy here go in the front, make it a little bit more pretty. You good? Did you get your fill? Is this what we're doing in your car next?
That's what we're gonna do in the car.
Is that what we're doing? I gotta get a hold of Audison and we gotta get some Voce amplifiers.
Voce amplifiers. I'm still thinking about
yeah?
This is
oh, slow down. You know, hey, instead of that, you know, we have a Forza Prima sitting right here. We could do those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little more our speed.
Dude, man, this is crystal clear.
Crystal clear? Alright guys, well that's gonna end this one. We hope you enjoyed this.
I did.
You enjoyed it? The one takeaway I will say, if you're going to be doing any form of Audison product, make sure when you're doing the DSP, you finalize it every time you do something major.
Every time you do a change.
Every time you do a change, well not every time you do a change. Anytime you do a drastic change. So like if you've tuned the left side, now you're working on the right side, go ahead and hit finalize. You can also save the file, export it out and save it like every other DSP. Strongly recommend doing that. The nice thing about it is you can do that. Not all DSPs are as easy as this to save. Nothing sucks worse than losing your tune. I will say I did it at one point when we were doing this. I didn't actually lose it, I just changed presets. So I was like, oh, phew. I had to step away for a moment because we were like really far into it and I was like, oh man, and then I was like, oh, yeah, hey, there it is, good call, Dean. I also would like to give a big shout out to the boss, Lance Doss, for helping us set this system up. We used him as consultation early on when we were putting the system together with the clients. He came through to help us get everything set up in the car. Awesome there. And of course Bob, Nav TV Bob, he's the man. You got anything else to add?
I'm gonna keep listening, so on to the next one, guys.
Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.